Hi, Kelly Vaughn here on Inside Indy, and as you saw on your screen, we're dedicating this show to the memory of those who lost their lives in an horrific car crash several weeks ago involving a mother and her twin children. And according to the news accounts, the 7-vehicle crash happened on eastbound I-465 near the 33-mile marker, resulting in multiple fatalities and multiple serious injuries. There were other cars involved as well. Documents show that police found a 2012 silver Ford engulfed in flames. 3 bodies were located in the wreckage, but could not at that time be identified due to the burns. State police said the fire was so intense it burned the surrounding area and metal guardrail, and that they discovered a charred Ford grill emblem in the grass away from the crash. So just horrific. A mother, her twins, Alana, June, and Ruby Koons all perished in that crash. So we wanted to dedicate this show to them because the topic for today's show involves car crashes. And though we don't know if the gentleman involved, the trucker involved in this particular crash, was drinking, or drugged. I just felt that because so many accidents are a result of those two issues, that we could open up the show with remembering that family. In the studio to talk about don't drink and drive, and don't drive drugged. We have Will Wingfield, who is with the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute. You're the communications director there, right?
That's right.
And welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We have Marshall Depew, who coordinates the training of Indiana police officers on impaired driving enforcement. Welcome to Inside Indy.
Pleased to be here.
You know, when I grew up, it's all about drinking and driving, but you got a lot of other things going on behind the wheels now, right?
That's right. So, the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute has the state's traffic safety office within it. And so we are a data-driven program. So when you talk about some of these serious fatal crashes, we look at what's causing them and ways to try and reduce that. And what we see from the statistics is that some of the primary causes are seatbelt usage and whether people are buckled up in their crash, and impaired driving. And as we look ahead towards the end of the summer, impaired driving is our big focus. We have what's called drive sober or get pulled over. We have about 230 police agencies that get traffic safety enforcement grants from us to do sobriety checkpoints, saturation patrols, and roving patrols to try and deter impaired driving that is overrepresented in fatal crashes. So, and again, looking at the data, the impaired driving is not just alcohol, it's not just illegal drugs, but all types of drugs that people could take. Prescription, over-the-counter can be included in that as well. So we're talking more now about drugged driving. It's not something that people have been thinking about for so long, and so it's something that we're trying to raise awareness of, and glad we have Marshall here with us today because he's in charge of helping train law enforcement on the complexities of drug and impaired driving.
Wow. So tell us what that training would entail, and especially since we've got the opioid addiction, or opioid crisis, you've got heroin, just people who are using illegal drugs. Whoa, that's I would think a lot to teach and to prepare people for, officers.
Well, through funding from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, it comes through Criminal Justice Institute out to the officers around the state. So I help coordinate everything from academy training for standard field sobriety, which we call SFST, and then what we also have are 2 other programs and training courses where we have officers, after they become a little more senior, are trained in a program called ARIDE, which is Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving Enforcement. Okay. And that is kind of the next step. And then we also have a program where we're always trying to add more drug recognition experts. And so that takes the baseline field sobriety where we find out that it's not a medical issue, that there's little or no alcohol, but there's impairment, and we go through a process of an evaluation to see what category of drug that is.
Okay, so when an officer is out there on the scene, he's pulled somebody over,
Right.
and we know about the different tests you can do for alcohol, but what do you have for drugs? How does that happen?
Well, the basis is still the standard field sobriety test, so that
Okay,
would be the
it's the
things
same.
where you see with the walk and turn and the finger to nose. But we expand on that because what we're looking for are the indications of the signs and symptoms of other drug use. And that involves things like a blood pressure check, looking at the pupils with different lighting conditions, checking body temperature and heart rate. And we go through some questions. So it's an expansion of the field sobriety into about maybe a 30-minute evaluation, and that's usually followed up with a blood draw for toxicology.
Wow, sounds like you almost have to be a nurse to be out there.
It is some extensive training, and what we do, we fund everything from out-of-town travel lodging, we supply equipment, we provide expert instructors to go through, and it basically is 2 weeks of academic classroom training where officers demonstrate these proficiencies, and then we actually go to a field setting where we work with real people taking real drugs in a controlled environment in a clinic, and then we have our supervising instructors observe these officers until they demonstrate enough proficiency to be certified.
There's so many drugs out there that people are on and need, because there's drug abuse and then there's people who need their medication.
Right.
So say, for example, a person who's a diabetic, and we know that if a person doesn't have their insulin, strange things can happen in terms of their ability to focus, and in a case like that, how is that treated when they are pulled over? Is that treated as you would as somebody who was caught with marijuana or with heroin? Because if that person caused an accident,
Right.
how is it treated
Well,
legally?
we still start with the same baseline tests, but we are able through some extensive experience to be able to go one way or another. Is it a result of someone who's had some stroke or heart attack symptoms, or maybe a diabetic seizure or epilepsy, or is it impairment due to alcohol, illegal or legal drugs? And then we just kind of go down that path to where it leads us. So the ultimate goal, of course, is safer highways for everyone.
Wow.
And I think that's something important for everyone who's watching this to remember, is that it's not just illegal drugs. A lot of people might say, well, I don't do illegal drugs, this doesn't apply to me. The medical conditions being one thing, but the drugs that are prescribed to you, everybody has gotten a bottle that says don't operate heavy machinery. A car is heavy machinery.
Yeah.
It's not just a bulldozer. But then also, even over-the-counter drugs, if it's combined with alcohol or with something else, there can be a reaction. So we advise people, make sure they know how the drugs are going to react before they get behind the wheel, or talk with their doctor, just so that they make sure that they're not in a situation where they're perhaps unintentionally find themselves impaired.
So this campaign that you're about to launch, have we done this before? I think we're all aware of it, that the drugs that we take from our doctor can cause us to be impaired, but we haven't really, we don't take it as seriously, because sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. So this is, you're making a concerted effort to make people aware that there's a new day.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
especially as some of our neighboring states are legalizing marijuana or considering doing that. We want to remind people that in all 50 states, if you drive high, you get a DUI. So that's been one of the things that are changing, but also just we're seeing alcohol impaired deaths go down. We're seeing alcohol impaired crashes go down. So that's why we're shifting our focus and our attention to drugged driving.
Wow.
Yes, the initiatives have been with us for some time, but we are trying to raise awareness and increase the number of officers that have this special training, and also to get that word out to everyone. We want to decrease the impaired driving. Now, the best way is not to do that. We also have to be able to respond to when we do find that on our streets and highways.
Okay. Now, the gentleman that was involved in the crash that was on 465, where the mother and her twins perished, he says he was reaching for his iced tea. And so there's the issue of even eating and drive. I mean, when does this stop? I mean, and I'm not saying that we should stop eating. I'm just saying when does anything can distract you? Anything can cause a catastrophic crash.
That's exactly right, and that's another one of the programs that we have. One of the things about distracted driving that people don't remember is that children and young adults that are driving under age 21 are not allowed to touch their cell phone while they're behind the wheel unless they're dialing 911. So if you're a parent of a young driver, if you are a young driver yourself, you should not be using your cell phone or advising your child to do the same. But distraction is a problem that affects all age groups.
Oh gosh, I see people out there, they have it up on the steering wheel and they're trying to, and I don't know why they're texting anymore, because if you have an iPhone, you can just tell Siri, hey, you can talk to your phone. Your eyes don't have to leave the road. So I don't see the point of looking down. In fact, now when she records it for you, you can say, read it back, and she'll tell you what, you don't even have to look at your phone at all.
Yep.
So I don't know why people are looking at their phone. You don't have any reason to do that anymore.
I agree. Couldn't agree more.
Okay. Wow. Is there anything, because we got just about 2 minutes left, anything you want the public to know about this particular campaign, or anything regarding this whole movement?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that anybody in the public can do to try and reduce impaired driving. The most important is to step up and be a sober driver. And when we say sober, it can be drugs or alcohol. But while I think part of the reason why we're seeing a lot of the decline in alcohol impaired driving is because people are using Lyft and Uber, ride sharing services, cabs even. And I think that they need to remember that that's not just for alcohol, it's also for if they're in a potentially drugged driving situation. The Red Line will be opening very soon in Indianapolis. That's a public transportation option in addition to Indigo buses. And then, we see a lot of underage driving. The legal limit for children under 21 is 0.02 blood alcohol concentration. So never providing alcohol to minors is important as well.
Right, okay. Very well. This has been good. I mean, good information, and I just appreciate you coming in and enlightening our viewers.
Thank you for having us.
All right, very good. Marshall Depew, who coordinates the training for Indiana State Police officers, and then Will Wingfield of the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute, your communications director there. Thanks so much to you both for joining us here on Inside Indy. And when we come back, we're going to driving school. We're actually going to learn how to be better drivers and be more defensive on the road next. And we're back here on Inside Indy, and we're continuing discussions about driving safely, especially in light of that accident involving the Koons family, where 3 people were killed when a trucker slammed into the rear of their vehicle on 465. And again, prayers out to the family of Alana and her children. But now we're going to talk to Keith Thompson. He is an instructor for Road Star Driving School in Noblesville. Welcome to the show, Keith.
Thank you, Kelly.
I wanted to have you in because, in light of this accident, it's really, people are talking about it. I know it's made me think more about what I'm doing when I'm out on the road. And it shouldn't take something like that, but it certainly made me more aware of what's going on behind me.
Right.
And I know Roadstar, you teach people to drive.
Right.
Right. Okay. So tell us about your organization.
We for the class, it's normally 30 hours of classroom, 6 hours behind the wheel. Adults can come in and just do 6 hours behind the wheel. They don't have to do the classroom. We have the 6 hours are one-on-one with an instructor, with a student, and it's just solely, that person in the car. Way back when, we used to take 3 out, but within the schools, we don't have that anymore. Normally they're private, so it's one-on-one, which is really kind of a good thing for kids. The first drive is kind of an introductory type drive. We get out of the car and we talk to them about blind spots, and we show them where the blind spots are, in the car when they're trying to look, they can't see in the mirror. And that's one thing about, checking or changing lanes. That's one of the things I test on when I do a drive test is when I do a lane change, are they turning their head? The second drive, we do a country drive, and I talk about off-road recovery. And, where the wheels, if they get distracted, they look off the road, they see an animal, whatever, and they drop off the edge, what are they going to do? And we talk about what to do. Of course, it's easier said than done. About not coming back quickly.
Overcorrecting.
And losing control.
A lot of accidents as a result of that.
Third drive is city. We do a lot of city work, a lot of turning at lights that are unprotected, protected lights. We introduce parallel parking. But I talk about the mirrors all the time. Checking your mirrors, checking what's behind you when you're coming up to a light. Look behind you. And I also talk about where to stop. When you stop behind a vehicle, you really should be able to see their tires. Because if you get too far up and you can't see their tires, you're not going to be able to get out. If you stay back and see their tires, you could cut the wheel either way and possibly get out if you're not closed in. And that's what I was thinking about that accident. I don't know where that lady was, in the middle or outside, but I don't know if she would have looked, she could have gotten out, possibly not. Right. And I'm not saying she wasn't, but like I said, the mirrors are important, but staying behind, just having that distance so that you could get out, I think is important, and I talk about that a lot. Fourth drive is parking. Fifth drive is freeway. We call it freeway now instead of the interstate because we go to 31, being here in Noblesville instead of going to 69. And we talk about, there's semis exiting, entering the interstate, and just checking your mirrors all the time. I like to get in the middle lane, and that's where semis are normally at, or they might be in the right lane, but they come up pretty tight on you. And I say, we're going to stay here because we've got some people merging. Sometimes they'll go around us, but after we get so far, we'll move back over. The last drive, we just teach for the drive test. We review everything. And we do give the drive test at the driving school because we participate in the waiver, which provides us to do that. They can go to the BMV, but they have to provide their own vehicle. And if they don't have a vehicle in their family, that they can do parallel parking, that type thing. They normally take it with us.
Okay. Wow, you were talking about that particular accident on 465, and I think we all think, we really just want to change it and make it okay, and it's not, and she's gone. But I had a situation like that, not exactly like that, but I was on 465, and the traffic stopped abruptly, and it was a tow truck coming. I mean, he was flying, and as everybody was. And so whether he was looking down, I don't know. And I just knew, I just went off. And I know that guy said, "Thank you, lady, for moving up," because he would have been you could just, because even when he got to the other car, he had to go this way. He barely missed them. And then and then hearing of their accident taught me, and I've been doing it since the accident, is I can't just drive with what's in front of me, and we know we look at what's going on in our peripheral vision, but I got to drive with what's behind me. So I've made it a point, and maybe every time you can't do it, when there's a semi behind me, and of course it could happen with a car. I mean, if a car is moving fast enough, it can do considerable damage, but with a semi behind me, I'm moving. My dad used to say, stay away from them when I was a young girl driving, and I've never forgotten that, but it's like certain things I'll do, like when I'm driving next to them, I'll speed up or I'll let them go ahead of me. But not so much when they're behind me. And I am aware of it, but that's a lot of power and a lot of weight. And then I know truck drivers will probably say, oh, well, these crazy drivers in these cars, they do goofy things because, as the guy claimed, somebody has stopped abruptly, but still, you got a lot more weight than I'm carrying, and it's going to do a lot more damage. And
I think that's what, people seem to do when they go to, not on the interstate now, but going to a light, and they stop, and what do? They're looking down at their phones instead of maybe paying more attention, focusing on their mirrors, looking what's behind you, but they tend to just look down because normally they have their phone right there, and they shouldn't have their phone right there.
Right. You mentioned, now you teach a lot of young people, so are they teaching driver's ed in school still?
No.
Really? I didn't know that.
Very, very few. Maybe if you were in a rural community, like I taught in Sheridan for a long time, but they've actually taken it out from there. But maybe there might be some schools in Indiana that still have it, but it would be more of a country school. It would be during the day, maybe when school is going on. I think it's just an expense factor. It just got so expensive.
Because I took it in the summer. You had to go back in high school. I went to Broad Ripple, and I remember going to summer school to take it. And that you watched movies. They show you movies of a bad wreck. There are things that I do, and especially when it's ingrained in you as a child, that like always turning on my turn signal. I think if I had learned when I was 22. Because I learned like at 15, I just do it instinctively because I was trained so young. But obviously, and that's what you're for. I mean, and I'm glad you're here to teach our young people. I just didn't know that they had taken it out of schools.
Well, I think I don't know how long ago, but I think some of these private places started popping up, and possibly kids could maybe take it at a different time versus maybe during the school or maybe during the summer. They could take it in the evenings when school was going on, and that just seemed to be a little easier. Now we even have classroom online. Students can take the classroom online, do it at home, and they still then come to us or go to another driving school for their lessons.
Okay, what about the whole texting thing? What do you guys teach the young people about that?
Well, when we give a drive test, if they pass, we give them a congratulations, and then we show them the restrictions. As the other gentleman talked about, up to 21, there's a lot of limitations they can't do. They can't have passengers for 180 days. They can't use a cell phone up to age 21 unless it's a 911 call. I'll tell you, I don't want to be negative on parents, but I think parents sometimes are maybe doing it in the car when the son or daughter's with them. And I mean, when they get their license, they're not going to be there with them. And I think it's probably good if we, teach. I'm kind of glad my son and daughter are passed. I don't have to deal with that. But, maybe think about that. What are you conveying to them? Because when they get on their own, if you're doing it, they're probably going to do it.
Wow. That's some scary stuff. And the young kids just don't. A lot of it, I think the one thing that they lack, obviously, is experience. And there are new things I'm learning even in my old age. And I would say the one thing that I tried to teach my nieces and my nephews in the car. My niece is 25. She was driving the other day, and she's like, when they'll go through a parking lot, and she's just driving, she's flying past the cars. It's like, no, you need to slow down because you need to anticipate every car you pass or that's ahead of you, this park might be getting ready to pull out. So that whole thing of anticipating. Or I'm watching other people because human behavior. Let me watch this guy over here. I bet he pulls out and he's not supposed to. But my niece, Diamond, Cheryl, is not anticipating. She's just Because they think, oh, well, I'm right. Well, you might be right, but you might also be dead. So, yeah. So, do you see that with young people, just that whole lack of, which is really defensive driving, anticipating?
Definitely. You know, I think that's where, you know, parents come in when they're driving with their son or daughter. I mean, they're pointing that out, you know, identify, predict, execute, those kind of things. That's one of the things we talk about on our steps on the IPI process, and just deciding, knowing what to do. And I think parents can help them out when they see those things, because they're not going to see them because they don't have the, as you said, they don't have the experience.
So how can someone sign up for Road Star Driving?
We're located at 225 Sheridan Road in Noblesville, and our website is www.roadstardriving.com. Our phone number is 317-770-4580. Our website is there. We have great instructors that are willing to work one-on-one with your child, and I think we do a great service.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your service. Keith Thompson of Road Star Driving. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Kelly.
On Inside Indy. And thank you for hanging with us this evening and listening to our message to you about safe driving. Be careful out there. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.